I got the email that it was like approved NBA credential, I started bawling my eyes out.
People think it's very different, like being on TV versus competing, but there's a lot of thinking on your feet quickly.
Journalism will survive in some form or another, and it needs people to be dedicated to it, and I'm there for that.
If I had to say something to, me 3 years ago, 4 years ago, before I started this whole journey, it would be just to take the risks.
My favorite quote that I always say all the time is, the answer is always no unless you try.
Hello everyone, welcome back to another episode of Holden Sherman's Conversations. Today's guest graduated college and months later, literally months later, started working for a national network. He's now at The Ringer, where he writes and podcasts about the MLB, NFL, and soccer, and casually, just casually, joins Bill Simmons on podcasts sometimes. Anthony Dabbundo, everyone.
Thanks for having me, man. I'm excited to be here.
Thank you. So my first question is, you graduated college about 4 years ago, and again, you talked to Cousin Sal, you talked to Bill Simmons. What does that mean to you that you've been able to do that so young in your career?
You know, it's a surreal in a way. Like when Bill first reached out about hiring me, I thought it was a parody account on Twitter. I didn't think it was real. I had to double check and make sure that that was actually what was happening. As somebody who grew up kind of somewhat listening to Bill, but became, as I got into college and older, became much more interested in kind of like the Ringer as a whole. People often ask me when I was at Action Network, like, you love your job. Would you go anywhere? Like, what's next? And I always said, like, I don't know. I think there's a couple places I'd love to work one day, and the Ringer sounds like a really cool place to work. And then it just kind of fell into my lap. And so much of this industry is about timing. And it's true of many industries, but especially in sports media, where you really don't know who's going to be watching at any given time. And so being able to work with Bill, who's, the pod father for a reason, joking around with Cousin Sal about gambling. There was a moment, we were all in LA last year for Core Week, and we're all out there, and Spotify office has like a movie theater in the office building, and it's 9:55 a.m. We're getting ready for a football Sunday. And I'm sitting next to Cousin Sal, and he's got a piece of paper with all of his bets written down on it. And I've got my spreadsheet, my laptop open, and we both crack open a can of soda at like 10 in the morning, getting ready for a full Sunday. And it just hit me that, like, what am I doing here? You get a little imposter syndrome, but it's been pretty unreal for sure.
What do you think kind of your journey shows about the modern media landscape, right? It used to be that it takes 10 years to get to Pittsburgh.
I think that's a question that schools and university admins and deans of communications programs are really in a tough spot to grapple with. And I see this, both sides of the dichotomy of it, with people that I've graduated with. And people who go into local news, local sports, they're grinding, they're putting in hours, they're doing a great job, they're talented people. And there is still value to that, especially because the people who still make decisions in media are of the generation of people who are still watching local sports, local news. But how many people under 30 are watching or even have cable or who are watching local news? I was back on campus in the spring, and I asked a room full of Daily Orange students, how do you consume media? How many of you watch ESPN when it's not live sports? Nobody raised their hand. Fox, no. But how many of you are on Twitter, on TikTok, who are using these newer platforms, who are frequently watching YouTube videos? And so it has enabled, for better or worse, people to do their own thing. It's not about institutions as much anymore. It's about what gathers attention. It's the attention economy. And so you see this now, and I have a friend, my friend Gil Gross, who I think, you should have on this podcast. He'd be great to talk to. He started a YouTube when he was in college. Every week he would just podcast about tennis. He would talk on his show. He'd have guests. He built up a following because he's a really sharp analyst of the game. You learn something new every time you listen to him talk about tennis. That was his passion. He played it. He loved it. He covered it at Syracuse. He wanted to cover it professionally. He built up a huge YouTube following. He didn't have to go cover local sports in some random place. He was able to, jump the line is the wrong word, but now he's working for the Tennis Channel. He's got his own show. He monetized his YouTube. Like, he's having a ton of success with that. And I think, mine's a little different because I still worked for platforms, but so much of what I create is kind of just you're following me, my opinions, my thoughts, my takes, and you can follow my bets if you want. Like those are the ways. And of course, Action Network, The Ringer, they elevate you. They give you more eyeballs. Like the opportunity to go on something like Bill is something you would not have had if I didn't work for Bill. But ultimately, talent now in the modern age shows through regardless of where you work. I think that's something that's different than it used to be.
And you said Bill reached out to you, which means that you had to have a platform, right? Like it's not like you applied, you're saying Bill reached out to you. So you had to have a platform, your own brand to be even in that spot in the first place, right?
Yeah, and this is the power of kind of saying yes, the power of always being down for something new, for a different challenge. We were all in New York. Action Network had a get together for Wildcard Weekend. We were doing a bunch of shows in the studio. We were a very remote company. We kind of do everything through Zoom at the time, and we all got together. And I had done VSiN, which is the Vegas Sports and Information Network. I would go on as a guest on different shows on their network throughout the week. And Mike Lombardi, who had been a frequenter on Bill's pod and now works as a GM at UNC, he had seen some stuff I had did, liked me, and was like, "Hey, why don't you come on the show?" And so it was a Saturday or Sunday, I don't even remember the day, of Wild Card Weekend of the playoffs, and I went on and did like a 15-minute segment breaking down all of the games that were happening that weekend, and Bill happened to be watching. You never know. Right. That's the thing. All it takes is like one moment, one thing. For me, it was like just another hit. I actually like came out of it being like, I think I did pretty well. I don't think it was like my finest work. And yet Bill reached us out from that. And so that's so much of how this thing works. Like you catch the eye of somebody at the right time. And, I'm sure you've heard the story, like demo tapes and stuff. All it takes is one person who sees something in you. That's certainly true in the industry still. There are still some tried and true things that remain timeless regardless of how the landscape is changing.
Does that mean kind of you think the connotation slash the value of like a cover letter and a resume has decreased because it's, hey, look at my LinkedIn, or hey, look at my podcast, look at my Instagram, has more weight to it than here's a piece of paper?
I have never been asked my college GPA. I've never been asked my high school SAT score. I have never been asked, honestly, for a resume ever. I mean, when I was getting out of college, around your age, senior year, I was applying places. I double majored in policy. And so like I did do a couple policy applications, and like they did. The sports media, they don't care. Like ESPN just hired Katie Feeney. It wasn't because her grades. It wasn't because of really probably anything she did in school. It was because she built up a huge following on social media platforms, and that is in the modern economy what is playing right now. And so, yes, I think that I have not updated a resume in many years. I think I technically had to submit one for like the Spotify portal to be like official to get the job, but I don't think so maybe I did technically update it, but I also don't really think I did. I might have just changed some dates and sent it in because I knew nobody was reading it. Cover letters are cool. It's good to be able to write, but I can learn way more about somebody in content by watching, consuming, or seeing what their content has produced than I can by reading some like prepared 800-word thing about how great they are that they think of themselves. So I don't really think cover letters are as meaningful. Of course, like internship season, that's a different kind of animal in and of itself, but that's kind of my take on the situation.
I honestly feel like that's like more comforting to hear, because I feel like it's so hard to differentiate yourself with just a bunch of words, and you're not writing about a story that you're necessarily passionate about. You all have to write about the same thing. I think being able to show your true colors, or the things that you love the most, or the things that you're doing, especially in media, which is a very expressive career path, I think it like adds some comfort and actually levels the playing field in a lot of ways.
It does. Yeah. And that's the thing, and look, I might not love all of the content that plays in the 2025 ecosphere, but I don't get to decide, right? We don't get to decide. And in some ways that's more democratic, small d democratic. It's more of a meritocracy in that way. And there's really no excuse for it now. Like that's part of the game at this point.
So my question for you is, coming out of college, did you know you didn't want to go a traditional media route, or did it just happen? I know you said you applied to a few places, but did you know you didn't want to start off in Idaho per se, or Montana?
Love the great state of Montana and Idaho, by the way. I'm going there in Montana next week, but I
No
think
shade to them, just small markets.
no shade. Yeah, small markets. Bozeman, great town. Go Cats. But I think that's so tricky. I don't know that I knew what I wanted. I remember I was around sophomore year and I was writing at the Daily Orange, maybe freshman year, and one of the elder statesmen of the Daily Orange
By the way,
told me, he's
for
like,
viewers who don't
yeah,
know,
go.
the Daily Orange is it's one of Syracuse's student newspapers. We're both Syracuse guys, so we know that. But
Yeah.
just for viewers,
Recently, we were number one in the country, I believe. We like to say that at least. Yeah, and one of the elder statesmen of the school newspaper was like, "I see you as a columnist one day. Like you like reporting, but you're a guy who likes to have takes." And it always kind of stuck with me because it is true to an extent. The ability to have backup, defend opinions is really always going to be valuable in any conversation, any kind of attention based platform. And so I always thought that I wanted to be in a place where I could have a voice beyond just what I'm saying, right? And so, or what I'm reporting, for example. And that was something that I always tried to do when I was covering Syracuse athletics in a much more traditional sense, where I was always kind of based in numbers. And that was always where I felt like I could explain the game using data to people who maybe weren't as data inclined or who weren't as knowledgeable in that space. And so, like, using numbers to explain what is really happening with this event you're watching. And that's where I was able to kind of input my voice. It's like we started these different kind of game recaps where I was going into, like, plays where the game changed, and not relying as much even on reporting as I was analysis, and breaking down not just like, oh, Tyus Battle really went into the gym and took extra shots last night, but like Tyus Battle, his 3-point efficiency is really skyrocketed, and they've really found an edge getting him catch and shoot looks from the corner or something of that nature. And that was me kind of injecting my voice, my analysis into coverage. You're still around the team, you're still getting input and information. And in some ways, like this pivot to gambling that I've done, which started in 2020 while I was still in school, I was doing Action Network freelance at the time because they were looking for people. Being able to freelance for them while being a part-time student, while going to games as a senior, Daily Orange, doing politics stuff over at news stuff at Citrus TV, the TV station. It kind of got me into just all kinds of different things, and I let's see what sticks. What's going to be the thing that gets me hired ultimately? Because like just having a job in this industry is hard. And Action Network was the one that kind of shone through. They liked me. I was doing well. Our soccer content that I started with was gaining in traction, and that got me hired full time. So I don't think like there's a sliding doors moment where things go a lot differently. But based on what my background was and where I felt like I had skills, that's what ultimately played.
do you think even though the Action Network is a national network, the fact that they were founded in 2018 and you started working for them in 2021, do you think that kind of gave you more of an ability to be a foundational piece for them?
To an extent, certainly their soccer coverage, which the company's had a lot of changes in the last year or so. So there's a lot less of soccer coverage. But when I joined in 2020, there was no soccer team, and soccer as a whole is inherently niche. But between the Euros that summer in 21, the Copa America, and then covering the World Cup in 2022, like we built a soccer team, BJ Cunningham and I, from basically zero, and that was really the core of what started for me. Like I was doing NFL stuff year 2, year 3 at Action. They kind of gave me the quote unquote promotion to get to do the big boy football on Sundays, and I was a part of some of their pods, but it always felt a little ancillary. And look, baseball coverage too, like covering baseball with Sean Zerillo, who I still think is one of the sharpest baseball minds and thinkers in this country. I know gambling can be a little taboo for people, but like it's true with Sean, like learning and kind of bouncing ideas off of him, so much fun. And I feel like it was informative for me, but soccer had always been like my first thing that kind of broke me into this space, and something that I've consistently done now for 4 years, 5 years. going on. This will be my 5th season covering soccer for some professional outlets, so it's going to be fun. But yeah, I think that has enabled me to kind of find my home, figure out what I'm best at, grow a brand to the point where now I'm really excited because next summer we've got the World Cup. And one of the things that was told to me when I was deciding if I wanted to leave for the Ringer, where do you see yourself when the World Cup rolls around? What's the best opportunity for you? And I still think that like the Ringer provides a great opportunity. One, they don't do a ton of soccer stuff. And two, their audience is an audience of people who are predisposed to like soccer, even if they're not necessarily like diehards right now.
Do you think being in the soccer betting sphere helps people actually respect your opinions, betting opinions on the MLB and NFL more? Because it's like you've created your own crevice in such a like betting crevice like betting analysis sphere in such a crowded space.
Yes. So NFL is always king, and that will always be king in this country. And look, it's something I've bet. I mean, I've been on the NFL since I was in high school. Shouldn't say this on a podcast, but like I've been betting on the NFL since I was in high school. Yeah. And
Do you want me to, do you want me to cut that out?
no. Keep it in. I don't care. I've been betting on the NFL since I was in high school. And so like it's always the king, and it got me hired at my job, and it's what people care the most about. I still get more, when the season begins, volume about that than I will about soccer. But soccer is like our own thing. And when I first met Bill, one of the first things he asked me was why soccer? And some of it was that it was an opportunity. It was something I liked. It was something that was growing, is growing. And he's like, so you zagged? And I said, yeah, like everybody else is doing NFL, NBA, plenty of that out there. But soccer is where I can really differentiate myself. And those NFL opportunities will always be there. They'll always come if you earn them. But they're not going to hire a kid straight out of college to do NFL betting content right off the rip unless you are like some kind of special talent, which I'm fine, but I'm not that. So that's where it kind of came to be.
Don't shade yourself.
Yeah.
Kind of going back to the imposter syndrome. How do you kind of like not let that get to you? Or at least the very least, how do you like, are you numb to it at this point? You're like, I am shooting the shit with Bill Simmons. Like, are you like numb to it? Like, does it not feel anything? How do you at least, at the very least, value those moments?
It certainly can get to the ego, I think, at times. And that's something that I try to tamp down, where you don't want to be like, okay, I've made it. Because what does that mean? Right? I work remotely. I have a job I like. I'm on podcasting with Cousin Sal during football season. I get to go on Bill from time to time, but there's always ways to grow in this space. You're never really like there because it's so competitive, and there's so many people that would love to do what you do and that will like outwork you and be a bigger part of the space. And we're thinking more forward. I think there are areas that I struggle with to this day, and that almost cancels out the imposter syndrome because it's like, oh, I don't deserve to be here. And then you're like, but I'm not actually here. What's here? What does that even mean? And I think about that too, where it's like, I'm not even on TikTok really. Like, is that a huge mistake? Am I missing out on a potential audience because I'm not using TikTok? Am I not using YouTube enough? Am I not leveraging my own content? Like, if I get fired tomorrow, like, what am I going to do to create content? Because I don't really have like a YouTube channel that's in my name. I have a bunch of articles that are for websites that I wouldn't be working for anymore in theory. Like, I think about those kind of things all the time. And I was in London in the spring, and I met this guy on the plane, and we struck up a conversation. Actually, funny enough, I was wearing a Syracuse shirt. His daughter went to Syracuse, and he made a comment about it, and we got to talking. And then he said, hey, like, I'm going to this Tottenham game Sunday with my buddies. Like, you should meet up with us before the game. We'll have pints. I'm like, all right, sounds great, because I was solo traveling. And we met up for pints. And, he's a lawyer. He's with a bunch of his law school buddies. And they're all in like their mid 40s, late 40s, early 50s. And they're kind of asking about me. And I'm sitting there and I'm explaining what I do in my career. And the one guy was really fascinated because, he's a lawyer. He's like, I can tell you're a pretty sharp guy. He's like, why sports media? Why choose a field where you truly have no idea? There's no set career path. You're kind of just doing it, seeing how it works. And I thought about that for a while. That was like little conversation that sticks with me. And I thought to myself, and then I said to him, I've always wanted to do this. and I would hate myself way more if I didn't try and never experienced it, never gave it a run, than if like I went for it and then eventually in like 5 years people are just hate me and decide I'm not employable or whatever, and then I no longer work in sports media and I pivot to a different career. There will always be time for that, right? When you're in your 20s, when you're in your college years, take those risks, go for something, shoot for the stars, and hope that you can be one of the lucky ones and one of the ones who's able to break through, because it is so hard. And if I'm able to do that, it's worth taking that chance. And I think he appreciated that and was like, that's a really interesting way of looking at it, because so many people have these cookie cutter ideas. Now I'm rambling of how life is supposed to go. And if you had told me 5 years ago I'd be working at the Ringer, I would have laughed. So that's just how it goes.
Well, I think also though it's that anyone who goes into like TV or just certain industries, you can tell they still have that kid in them, right?
Yes.
Like that's how I felt when I covered the NBA draft a few months ago. I was like, oh my God, 15-year-old me would have found this as a joke. He knew he wanted to go into media, but he did not think he'd be covering the NBA draft at 21 years old. So it's kind of like that element, right? Like the little kid is still in you and you didn't give up on it.
Precisely. Yep. I get to talk about sports for a living. I mean, it's a job that most people would love to have. People don't realize exactly what goes into it. I always say you can't just love sports to be a good sports media professional. There has to be more to it than that. You have to think differently, be creative, think like a business mind in a way. Like there's all kinds of skills that translate, unless you're, again, one of those people who just has the voice or has the ability to write in ways that are above my skill level. So like that's one thing that you have to at least try.
And at the very least, you have to love people as well. Just want to add.
Yes.
You have to love covering people. I
mean, you've probably seen this, right? I mean, how big was your BDJ class at freshman year, and how big is it now? Because what usually happens is it cuts in half.
BDJ, broadcast journalism major. It's much smaller. I have so many friends who were broadcast journalism majors and now they're not. And it's not like they went to print journalism, they went to PR, they went to advertising. They just went away from the media sphere. I want to harp on something you were talking about if I get fired right now, I don't have a YouTube, I'm not really on TikTok. What would you say is your platform? I know you've got over nearly 11K on Twitter, or X, excuse me.
Still Twitter.
Yes.
It'll always be Twitter to me.
Me too. What would you say is your platform? Is it, hey, look at all the articles I've written, look at all my podcasts? Because I think, at least when it comes to a lot of young people, myself included, like in college, we think a platform is having your own followers on whatever social media account. It's not necessarily my body of work for a publication. What would you say your portfolio or your brand is?
It's a good question. And something I think about almost daily. The Action Network app is it's an app that you can use for sports betting, where you can track other people's picks. You can track your own picks. It's kind of like social media for sports bettors. And so you can go on there, and I've logged, let's see, I'm going to pull it up as we chat here. I downloaded the app like 2018. And since 2018,
I've actually written an article with Matt Moore, who's one of the Action Network.
Yeah, I love Matt, HP. He's great. Quite a character. I've logged almost 11,000 bets in 7 years.
Oh God.
And so through that, yes, we are up 3.5% return on investment, which is pretty good. 66,000 followers there. Now, how many of those are active? I always wonder. Same thing with Twitter, because the app has seen a lot of transformation in the last few years. That is something that I think about often. And I think those followers are people who like OGs, like my picks. They want to know what I'm betting on. They want to tail me. They want to bet against me. They want to consider my opinions before placing their own bets, those kind of things. That following, I've been very clear when I joined the Ringer. I was like, I'm still going to use this app. This is important to me. That is something that, I can leverage into, maybe down the road, a Substack of some sorts or something of that nature, where I'm giving, specific content in the gambling space for people who are gamblers who want to bet on sports. That will always be there. What the Ringer has given me an opportunity to do is to branch a little bit beyond that, because I understand that gambling is polarizing. Not everybody likes it. Some people think it's terrible. I get all that. I think if it's done correctly, it enhances the sports experience. I think there is a line where it can go way too far into not tarnishing, but diminishing the sports viewing experience. And you have to be able to walk a very fine line to successfully do that. But um, I'm thinking a lot now as the ringer is shifting. We're launching YouTubes for our gambling stuff. We're going to be, doing breakout clips and using TikTok. And so I think that's one of my main goals, honestly, for 2025 football and into 2026. How can I leverage my own audience beyond just Twitter? Because like I've been tweeting for 10 years. I have 10,000 followers. It's a decent following, but it's nothing crazy.
By the way, I
Uh,
see that you tweet a lot of Simpsons memes. I was raised on the first 12 seasons of The Simpsons, so
okay.
just had to shout that out.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, and that's the other thing too, like making dumb pop culture references, things that only apply to like 18 of my followers, but I'll tweet about it anyway because I'm servicing those 18 people. I'll tweet about tennis on a Thursday afternoon in August. I will tweet about the Phillies because I know some people follow me for that, but like other people who are soccer fans are like, who's this loser tweeting about the Phillies, right? So because my interests are so varied, it does make it a little tricky to leverage an audience, but it's something that if you're just on Twitter in 2026, 2025, you're just not going to get the same pull that you used to be able to get. And that's something that I'm grappling with because it's changed for me. I'm comfortable in what I do, my routines, I podcast, I write, I tweet, and I post a little bit on my Instagram, but not much professionally. It's more personal. So I'm looking to do a better job of that. It's my main goal for the upcoming year.
But at the same time, with your Twitter, which can lead people to your other places like the Action Network work that you've done in your betting profile, it's kind of like showing people the integrity you have like a normal journalist would, right? You can go and check to see how right a journalist is on their takes or on their reports. People can
Yep.
go, and even though you graduated college just 4 years ago, and they're saying, well, why would I want someone in their mid-20s to give me betting advice? They can go and be like, oh, one, he's got a huge following, but more than anything, he has a history of being profitable. So I feel like
Right.
how you're describing it actually creates a gap, like a bridge for the part that might be weird because they might want people much older giving them betting advice sometimes.
Yeah, and I don't know if that's even true amongst Gen Z, right? Like I don't know if our
That's not a
generation
good thing.
wants that.
Yeah.
Like I actually think, and you can generally get a feel of like what your audience is based on just who interacts with you the most. I would say the average person who consumes my content is older than me.
Oh, okay.
Um, and I find that to be almost like a red flag to myself, because I know how popular betting is amongst the people that are younger than me. I'm 26. And that's where I think like the not having the presence on the other social media platforms that fellow young people are using, because I have a little bit of like an old soul personality, does impact my following. And so I think that, again, I just said this, but like trying to leverage that audience more, especially because like the Ringers audience is very millennial.
Yeah.
Because of Bill, because of the other podcasters they have, a lot of their talent. Like I think the youngest person who's on a mic at the Ringer, and so that gives me one an opportunity, but two, it's also like it's on me to an extent to try to bring in those younger audiences. But the problem is like, gambling content is still niche. So what's the ceiling on bringing in those young people to do a better job of that? So I constantly go back and forth on what's next, what I should be doing better. So if anybody has any tips, let me know.
Do you what are the most obscure or craziest messages or hate mail that you've gotten for a bad take? People saying, "Hey, you cost me my mortgage" or something like that.
Hopefully that has not happened. I have not seen that before. Most obscure. I mean, most of the hate I get is honestly not even, and I get more of it now since I joined the Ringer than I did at the Action Network, because the Action Network was catering to like people who are gamblers. They kind of get it. But like I think the Ringer audience has exposed you more to fans of teams who also like to occasionally bet. And so like if I had $1 for every team or person who was like, you hate my team, and it's like their team and I was critical of them, and like yeah, I've been wrong plenty. I often over the course of a given season will bet against the same team a lot if I think that the market is too aggressively onto them. I think about like last year's Texans. Like the Texans fans got mad at me online. The Manchester United, Arsenal. Even though I'm not even really that much of an Arsenal hater, there's various fan clubs over the years that have been kind of mad at me because I'm not just telling them how good their team is all the time. I think that's something that you kind of get used to. If you ever go on the Bill Simmons Reddit, anytime I make an appearance on that show, there's some really funny commentary about me being Italian, like obviously the correlation between that and the history of gambling with Italians, and then like the Tony Soprano jokes, and then the mafia jokes. So those are all hilarious to me. But there's various different bits. The thing is, once you get to a certain point, you just don't really care. I think it's funny. I enjoy it. It's very rare that it gets personal to the point where like I'm personally offended. So as long as it's lighthearted and not like aggressive or like directly impacting me, then I'm totally fine with anything anybody wants to say, negative or positive. I've had so many positive interactions, meeting up with people at bars, running into people in bars, soccer games, and uh, oftentimes bars. So you just kind of run into people and you're like, oh, I listened to your pod, or I told your bet, or, sometimes they'll razz you. It's like, oh, I bet Chelsea, they lost 5-0. Nice job, man. Sorry. And we'll get them next time. You kind of get used to it. You get numb to it as well.
No, I was listening to Nick Wright on a podcast once, and he was talking about another Syracuse alum. He was talking about how people are nasty online, but when he goes to a Yankees game, everyone wants to talk to him and tell him how awesome he is. So
right, it's true.
That same thing kind of happens.
Yeah, people are much more likely to be mean online. I've had people who are mean, and then like I just start up a conversation with them, and then they end up being fine. I think that's just something you kind of get used to.
Yeah, because you are thrusted into a position with a lot of eyeballs to start. I'm assuming there were times where the pressure might have gotten to you, or you're just on deadline and there's a lot to do. What do you tell yourself in those moments, or what have you told yourself in those moments to kind of keep going and make sure your work is as good as it can be?
Yeah, that is the hardest thing about the gambling industry, because I put thought process into bets that I know people are putting money on. And when I'm wrong, it's not just me that's losing. If Nick Wright gets up and has this dramatic monologue about how the Chiefs are the greatest team ever, and then they get clowned like they did in the Super Bowl, he has to eat shit for like a morning. He gets made fun of, but there's no real stakes. People still love Nick Wright. Yeah. Gambling content, because of the fact that there's money on the line, there is a little bit more stakes. And so I always feel bad. Like if I have a bad day, not just because like I lost, some money, but also because I know there are people who rely on me, like me, who maybe aren't as, who are more like dramatic about it. And I've done a pretty good job of trying to stay level headed throughout this process, but it can be hard where you just feel like shit at the end of the day. Like if I had a bad NFL Sunday, I'm like, man, I spent a lot of time this week trying to think about who was going to win these games, and then I was just wrong on 2/3 of them. So that part is really hard, and that does have pressure then, because like the next week rolls around, and guess what? You're still going to be making picks. You still want to be right. That is by far the hardest thing, and I think a lot of people struggle with it who are in the space. But it's important to just try to stay responsible, trust your process, reevaluate your process. I mean, think about like how you go about watching games. I've done a lot of different thinking in the last year, because like my NFL was great for a couple of years, and then last year wasn't great. I ended up having like a losing season, and I was just like, this is like I was down a little, just felt like didn't really have seeing the board well, so to speak, and that'll happen. But I don't have a great answer for how you're supposed to like deal with that. Just that, you can always be thinking of new things, new ways to think about sports.
Do you ever bet against your teams? Like what you do in the Super Bowl?
I'm not an Eagles fan actually, but I'm a Colts fan, which is super bizarre. What's that?
Behind you, is that Philly special? That's why I asked.
It is. Yeah, I go on their pod to talk Phils.
Yes. Yeah. Okay.
I mean, not a great decision I made 21 years ago to become a Colts fan. It has not. I mean, we had a run with Peyton and Andrew, but the Eagles have certainly been one of the dominant franchises of the last decade in the NFL, them and the Chiefs and Patriots. But I in the Super Bowl, World Series type thing, that would be tough, I think. I don't know that I could actually place dollars on it, but I can also get on a podcast and say, like, look, I am a Phillies fan. My objective opinion is X. My subjective opinion is Y. I think being a fan of your teams and knowing them inside and out gives you an advantage as a gambler. There's no team in baseball I've made more money on, and there's probably no team in sports that I made more money on than the Phillies, both on and against in the last couple of years, just because I know the staff so well. I know the pitching. I know how they match up in certain situations. I understand like how the ballpark plays with certain wind factors. I'm there a lot. So like, live betting, like who's available in the pen, et cetera, stuff like that. I think that is an advantage you have over other fans. Like, you can't possibly follow. I mean, you can if you're a sicko, but you can't possibly follow the 32 teams in the NFL the way you follow your one team. There's always going to be a team you know the most about. For me, like the Colts and the Eagles, just by virtue of living here, I know those teams better than any other team in the NFL. Doesn't mean I don't know the other teams, but I feel like I usually have a pretty good read on the Eagles, for example. And then, of course, I did have the Chiefs in the Super Bowl. So, well, I picked the Eagles to win the NFC, and then I didn't. How do you go against Mahomes was my philosophy for the last 3 or 4 years of football. So I was like, I'm just going to stick with Mahomes again, and eventually you get burned.
You're 26. You've already done a lot. What's next?
That's a good question. I think the big thing for me, like I said earlier, is to grow the personal brand on social media platforms. Try to create more lasting connections with people who follow me, and I think I've done a solid job of that. And I think I have to figure out what the best way to do that is, while also, ensuring that the Ringer's not going to get mad at me for doing stuff like that. So I have to find that balance. But that's the big thing. Honestly, the Ringer is such a special, unique place. And of course, Bill himself is unique and, raises all boats around him. I am super happy in my current role. I think as long as I'm lucky enough and able to turn on a microphone and talk about football, talk about soccer, talk about betting, talk about smart discourse in sports, I will do it. I think eventually there may come a day, I don't know this, but there may come a day where I kind of have to specialize a little bit and kind of pick one and go all in on that. And whether that's soccer or trying to do the football thing more seriously, that could be in the future. We will see. But for now, I'm enjoying kind of the win, because like in this industry, there really is no 5-year, 10-year. It's so hard. It's so impossible. And a lot of friends' dads are like, oh, you're going to work at ESPN one day. I don't know. Is that the shining beacon on the hill it used to be? Is that what I'm like striving for? Because I don't feel that pull. It's easy to say that when you don't have the offer in front of you, but like I don't feel that pull that I used to, dream on one day. Like I could work at ESPN or blah blah blah. Like growing up, I wanted to be the Phillies beat writer for the Athletic. I mean, I would do that job. I think I could do it well, but like I also haven't been a reporter in years. So would I even be good at it? Maybe I wouldn't do it that well. Maybe I'm too much of a fan. So I think there's all kinds of different ways. You never know how this is going to turn out, and that's one of the keys to trying to make this work. Just being flexible and adaptable.
That's I hear that from almost anyone who's older than me, whether it's by a year or 5 years or 10 years, all about you don't know what this industry holds, so you can't make these type of plans. You got to be present.
You got to think for the future too. It's changing more rapidly than you can possibly imagine.
For sure.
I feel old already, and I'm only out of school 4 years, right? Like just how it's changed since COVID, I think COVID's the accelerator of the trends, but just how it's changed since then is remarkable.
This is my last question. I ask this to every guest. What is something that you wish you could tell your younger self as you are entering the industry that you know now?
How young am I in this hypothetical? Am I in college or am I out of college?
You realize you wanted to pursue the career that you're pursuing.
Remote work is both a blessing and can be a curse. I think being around people, especially in this industry, is super important. I value my ability to kind of exist anywhere. I've certainly been able to save money living at home after college and working remotely. That's something that's really, if you have that luxury to take advantage of it for a period, but you still don't beat the going in, meeting people, interacting, because those kind of interactions will pay more down the line, and you're just not going to get that same level of thing sitting in an office, in an apartment or a house or wherever it may be all the time. And uh, I think the other thing is when you go to a school like Newhouse or any school really, you will have your core friends, but if you're able to leverage those weak friends, and I say that in the context of like, we went to school together, we had classes together, we always had things in common then. Maybe they work in the same industry, but I'm not like texting them about like their new girlfriend or boyfriend. Like, I'm not texting them to like hang out this weekend, or I'm not going to visit them in New York City or in DC or something. But they're still somebody I would consider friends. Those can be some of the most valuable resources you will have, and keeping those connections alive, whether it's through, social media, tweeting at them, texting them about Syracuse, about your school or whatever that may be, talking about the industry, gossiping about fellow people you graduated with. Those things, those little connections are almost as important professionally, actually, honestly, more important professionally than like, who your core group of friends are, because your core group of friends will always be there for you. They'll always drop a name, or they'll refer you to somebody. But those weak connections, those weak friends, and weak sounds negative, but like weak in terms of the strength of the connection, those people will be really important for you. And like, I know multiple people that have gotten jobs through those situations. I helped somebody who I used to work with get a job at a company through a guy I went to college with, because I gave him a good review because I loved working with the guy. So like little things like that all really end up making a difference.
Before we go, do you want to drop your socials?
Yeah, I'm on Twitter at Anthony Dabbundo. It's my name. You can find my written work at The Ringer. My bets in the Action Network app, also on my username. And soon to be on TikTok. I'm on TikTok technically. I have not posted yet, but it's just my name as well. So Instagram is Ant Dabbundo.
Thank you so much. Thank you all for watching another episode of Holden Sherman's Conversations. Make sure to like, subscribe, and turn on post notifications so you don't miss the latest from Holden Sherman's Conversations.